Hello, I'm Kaiser and welcome to Moose Reads. Before I get started, I want to say that the opinions that I give here are my own opinions. They are extremely subjective. If I dislike a book, it is not a reflection on the author and it is not a reflection on people who do like it. Different people have different tastes, and that's okay. I want to apologize for the erratic upload schedule recently. For reasons I imagine many of you can relate to, I've been feeling pretty stressed and depressed recently, and that kills my productivity. I'm trying to get back on top of it, but please be patient with me. Also, it's the 1-year anniversary of the channel. Isn't that exciting? I mean, technically this channel has existed for some reason for years with no content and no intention of making content, and I technically started posting book videos last October before realizing that scripting was necessary and starting over. But if we go from the start of videos on this channel, it began November 10th. So, thanks to all of you who have watched my videos over the year, and especially to the 24 of you who are subscribed. Today, I will be doing my October wrap-up. In October, I read 12 books. These books totaled 3,584 pages, with an average of 299 pages per book and 116 pages per day. Full reviews will hopefully go up throughout November and not into December. There should be chapters marked so you can easily skip around. The first book I read in October was Mort by Terry Pratchett. This is the 4th book in the Discworld series, or the first book in the death part of Discworld. It is a fantasy novel. The description says, "Death comes to everyone eventually on Discworld, and now he's come to Mort with an offer the young man can't refuse. No, literally can't refuse, since being dead isn't exactly compulsory. Actually, it's a pretty good deal. As Death's apprentice, Mort will have free board and lodging. He'll get use of the company horse, and he won't have to take any time off for family funerals. But despite the obvious perks, young Mort is about to discover that there is a serious downside to working for the Reaper Man, because this perfect job can be a killer on one's love life." 3 stars. Much like with Equal Rights, I enjoyed this book until the end, and then the end kind of killed all of my goodwill. The end to Mort didn't feel quite as disjointed to me, but it also didn't feel very satisfying. I think it's time to admit that Discworld just isn't the series for me. I'm not going to keep reading it. I know it's beloved, so I'm certainly not going to say this book or this series is bad. I just wouldn't recommend taking my word for it on this one. After that, I started in on my latest attempt to read the Resident Evil novels. I actually managed to read all of them this time, aside from 0 Hour, which I read sometime last year and didn't feel the need to revisit now. For the most part, these are novelizations of the main Resident Evil games, so 1 through 3 and Code Veronica. They are all sci-fi horror novels written by S.D. Perry. I would like to note that these are an aberration in my reading. I feel like as soon as I found booktubers that had similar tastes to me, they all started trying to read more horror, and I want you to know that's not what's happening here. I don't do horror as a rule. For some reason, partly to do with nostalgia from watching my brother play the games, Resident Evil gets a pass, but it's one of like 3 exceptions. First in the series is the Umbrella Conspiracy. The description says, "The Special Tactics and Rescue Squad, STARS, investigate a string of grisly murders in a remote mountain community and discover evidence of a widespread conspiracy." 3 stars. The description for this book is terrible, and I think it encapsulates the biggest problem with these books, which is that they're really only for fans of the games. If you aren't familiar with the games, however, what this book is actually about is the members of the STARS team getting trapped in a creepy mansion full of weird puzzles and zombies, and trying to escape with their lives. I have to give it to Perry that she probably did about as good a job as anyone could in adapting the first game into a book. All of the games follow 2 different characters, sometimes as distinct playthroughs, sometimes mixed together. I think the first game is the only one where the 2 storylines are incompatible, Whichever character you choose to play as, the other is mysteriously missing at the start of the game, and you later find out has been imprisoned by the big bad the entire time. Because of this, to incorporate both characters, Perry had to mix and match which parts of the game each one tackled, and make sure they didn't cross paths. Most of the game involves shooting zombies and solving puzzles, often backtracking through rooms to find the item you need to put in a certain place. It makes for an interesting game, but if you strip out the puzzles and don't want to describe killing zombies 100 times, there's not a lot left to write about. Perry instead opted to keep the puzzles, but remove a lot of the backtracking, and occasionally just make up excuses to hand the characters solutions. Overall, I'd say it's a pretty good game adaptation, but not a great book in its own right. If you're a fan of the games, you might enjoy it, otherwise I wouldn't recommend it. Next up is Caliban Cove. The description says, "In the aftermath of their ordeal through the Umbrella Corporation's genetic research facility, the surviving members of the Special Tactics and Rescue Squad, STARS, attempt to warn the world about the conspiracy to create terrifying biological weapons. But the conspiracy is far from dead, as the STARS learn when they are declared outlaws by the very people who train them. Forced to go underground, the STARS resolve to battle the conspiracy on their own, determined to seek out and stop Umbrella's experiments wherever they may be. Combat medic and biochemist Rebecca Chambers, the sole survivor of Bravo Team, joins a new STARS strike force when rumor comes of another Umbrella experiment hidden beneath the rocky cliffs of Caliban Cove, Maine. Someone is building an army of the undead. Within a sinister lighthouse, through a complex maze of sea caves, inside the shell of a sunken shipwreck, the STARS must battle more unspeakable horrors and stop a madman from unleashing the biohazard upon the world. But the STARS may never get the chance, as the aggressive DNA-altering virus Umbrella has engineered to create its living weapons begins to infect them." 3 stars. This book stands a little better as a book, but that's because it perfectly illustrates the other big problem with this series as a whole. For some reason, probably because my brother bought them all at the same time, I always thought that each of these books was an adaptation of one of the games, and that they were all written after Code Veronica came out. When I went to look up what game Caliban Cove was adapting, however, I learned just how wrong I was. Perry actually wrote the series as the games were coming out. Trouble is, the games have some continuity issues, more and more the further in you get. In between the games, however, Perry decided to expand the series, which creates its own continuity errors completely separate from the games they're adapting. Caliban Cove is the first of 2 books that Perry made up entirely on her own. It's not a bad book, either for its own sake or in the overarching Resident Evil story. It ties for the shortest of the books, and it felt the shortest, which I think worked against it a little. I also felt that Perry ran into horror's population problem. See, if you're trying to make a scenario seem extremely life-threatening, the easiest way is to kill a few people. The first game and book do this by establishing the STARS Bravo team has gone missing and then letting the Alpha team find them. Caliban Cove, however, starts with 5 characters, and that's all they have to work with. With a population that small, you either run out of people fast or you diminish the threat level. I'm not going to spoil which way this goes, but I will say that it had a somewhat negative impact on the book. Then on to City of the Dead. The description says, "A rookie cop and a resourceful young woman in search of her brother venture into Raccoon City on the very night that a horrifying viral outbreak has transformed every man, woman, and child into one of the living dead." 3 stars. This book is once again adapting one of the games, Resident Evil 2. Again, Perry does a pretty good job. There's a bit more story to dig into for this one, and the characters both have their own path through the city, so she didn't have to do as much work trying to figure out who should go where. I do think she skipped a lot more puzzles in this one, but I think that was probably for the best. Overall, this one was fine. It was probably either the best or second best book in the series. 4th in the series is Underworld. The description says, Umbrella has begun to lose control of its hidden research facilities. 3 labs have already been destroyed, but beneath the deserts of the American Southwest, one of the company's most elaborate facilities is about to go online. 3 stars. Once again, Perry decided to write her own story expanding the Resident Evil universe. Mostly, I thought the story was pretty good. It also suffers from the population problem, only worse because you know going in that most of the characters can't die. Still, the story as a whole is pretty engaging and makes up for the fact that the threats are generally less lethal than they should be. This was honestly my other favorite, though I do have to admit that it has the benefit of being new. It's not based on a game, and I've never read it before, so I didn't know what was going to happen. All the same, the new facility was a genuinely interesting concept, and I had a pretty good time. After that was Nemesis. The description says, Zombies, mutant animals, bioengineered weapons, and surgically enhanced monsters. Secret labs and widespread conspiracies. It seemed impossible, but Jill Valentine and her teammates among the stars had seen it all firsthand when the Umbrella Corporation turned Raccoon City into a staging ground for the most insidious genetic experiments ever conceived. After all she's been through, Valentine is ready to leave that remote mountain community forever. But Umbrella isn't finished with Raccoon City. Too much evidence of their unethical and immoral research still exists. It must be recovered or destroyed, and quickly, before it can be traced back to Umbrella. And with William Birkin's mutagenic virus already spreading through the city like wildfire, drastic measures are needed. Under cover of night, mercenary teams have entered the city, along with something else, Umbrella's failsafe, an evolved version of its Tyrant-class killing machines. A lethal creature codenamed Nemesis. Now, Nemesis is on the hunt, and Jill Valentine is about to become prey. 3 stars. This book was definitely bottom 3 for me. Because Perry kept writing her own thing into the series, this one suffers the worst from continuity issues. At least one of them was entirely Perry's fault, but the other might have been a game problem. I'm not sure. Again, I think Perry skipped most of the puzzles in this, and this time I'm not sure it really worked. I'm honestly not as familiar with Resident Evil 3 as I am with 1 and 2, but I kept feeling like there was a lot missing. Also, because Resident Evil 3 takes place at the same time as Resident Evil 2, it feels a little weird having a book in between. This isn't entirely Perry's fault, of course. She had no way of knowing what was coming. But it does kind of illustrate why she probably shouldn't have thrown in extra books if she wanted to keep adapting the games faithfully. The last entry in the series is Code Veronica. The description says, A desperate search for her missing brother once again pits Claire Redfield against the terrifying bioweapons of the Umbrella Corporation. Her quest leads her to a remote island where a mad genius has unleashed every grotesque creature at his disposal to stop her from interfering with his horrific agenda. Catapulted to the bottom of the world, Claire is at last reunited with the man she came to find. Chris Redfield has been fighting a one-man war of his own against Umbrella's most terrifying creations, and is now on a collision course with the man who betrayed the stars in Raccoon City. A man who should, by all rights, be dead. Captain Albert Wesker. 3 stars. This one should maybe be a 2-star, and was definitely my least favorite of the bunch. This game exists in a weird limbo for me. My brother never bought it, so I'm not at all familiar with it, but I did watch a playthrough of it, either this year or last, so I'm not entirely unfamiliar with it either. The result is that while reading it, I kept feeling like we were skipping a lot of stuff, some of which I was pretty sure was significant lore, but I couldn't be entirely sure. I don't really like either this game or this book all that much. It sits in kind of an odd place in the continuity because there ought to be more connective tissue and there just isn't, at least not in the main games. It's not as bad in the books, because the connective tissue is mostly established via the extras, but it still felt strange having Claire show up at this random Umbrella facility looking for Chris, especially since she almost immediately contacts the others who are then with Chris, who sets off to rescue her. This is the book that best highlights my third major issue with this series, which is the number of POVs. Given that each game has 2 playable characters, I would expect these books to be dual POV. Instead, Perry opts for multiple POVs, including that of the villain or villains. I actually liked this back when I read 0 Hour, because there were several decisions that the antagonist made in the game that I didn't understand. Perry did a good job of explaining what he was thinking and what was going on with him, so it was helpful for me to read the book. Most of the time, however, having things in the villain's point of view takes some or all of the punch out of the reveals. There's a reveal somewhere around the midpoint of this game, but the book spoils it pretty early and kind of defangs it in the way it plays out. It's not my favorite reveal, but that doesn't really matter. There's also a second reveal that they just straight up spoiled in the description, that Wesker's still alive. I suppose you know that in the game canon if you play the side games, but you definitely wouldn't know it if you were just reading the books, so it should be kept as a surprise for the reader. Like with the first reveal, we get this one by having a chapter from Wesker's point of view, and I really feel like having it be a surprise for both the reader and for Chris, who runs into him, would have been better. There are other issues I have with this book, but they're pretty minor, so I'll save them for the full review. At any rate, I really didn't enjoy this one much, and it was a slog to get through, especially since I desperately wanted to read my next book. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I'm an anime nerd. Sometime this year, I watched a show called Solo Leveling and really liked it. Unfortunately, it's only got 1 season, so it didn't end. Frustrated, I sought out the comic it's based on, and read the whole thing over the course of like 1 weekend. Recently, for reasons I cannot fully explain, my brain fixated on this series again. The intensity was such that I wanted to read it again, but my general policy with comics is that if I want to read them more than once, I ought to own them. Since we're approaching the gift-giving season, I figured I'd throw them on my wish list, and so went to look them up. At this point, I discovered that they actually started as books, and since books are almost always better, I needed them. This wasn't a great thing, because my library only has the audiobooks, and the wait was a little long. I kind of thought it wouldn't be a great series for me to listen to, and I really didn't want to wait. So I caved and just bought the damn things. I've been hoarding book money on Amazon for a year for just such a situation, so I could do this, but now I'm tapped out, so hopefully it doesn't happen again anytime soon. The thing is, I started reading these on the 27th and just raced through them. They mostly end in kind of stupid places, and going through them that fast while already knowing the plot from having read the comic, it's a little hard to remember what happened in which book. And I don't really think they stand alone all that well anyway. So I'm just going to lump the 5 volumes I read before October ran out as one and give my general thoughts. The description for Volume 1 says, E-rank hunter Jinwoo Sung has no money, no talent, and no prospects to speak of, and apparently no luck either. When he enters a hidden double dungeon one fateful day, he's abandoned by his party and left to die at the hands of some of the most horrific monsters he's ever encountered. But just before the last fatal blow, ping! Congratulations on becoming a player. This is another one where I don't feel like the description really tells you much about it, so I'll explain a bit more. In the world of Solo Leveling, magic gates filled with monsters started opening and random people started getting magic or superhuman abilities. These people are called hunters, and they are ranked based on strength from S to E, with E being the worst. If they don't clear out the gates within a week, they break and the monsters escape into our world. From there, you get what it says in the official description, but I'll add that usually once you become a hunter, your strength is set. There's no way to get stronger. But once Jinwoo becomes a player, he discovers that he's the only hunter who can level up. The whole thing is just one big power fantasy, but it's still kind of a fun time. I will say, if you're at all interested in this, read the comic, not the books. Objectively, these books are not well written. There's not a lot in the way of description, there's way too much automatopoeia, and every time Jinwoo wants to check something in his stats, we get a stat screen that takes up half a page rather than just describing what he's checking and what the change is. And yet, I gave them all 4 stars. Like I said, it's a fun time. It isn't really less fun in book form, except that the sparse descriptions probably make it more frustrating for new readers. I had experienced it in a visual medium already, so it wasn't that big of an issue for me. It did make a few things I didn't fully understand in the comic a little clearer as well, which I appreciate. The other thing of note is that Jinwoo is a lot more overpowered in the books. Because my brain was fixating so hard, and because the descriptions weren't cutting it, I started rewatching the anime, and they made him struggle so much more with his early fights. I'm not sure where the comic falls on that one. I think it's probably more like the anime, but I remember noting some differences when I went through it before, so maybe that was one of them. The result is that the stakes generally feel lower in the books, but the cool factor is higher. Again, I like these, but I would not recommend reading them first. As far as I can tell, the comic is extremely faithful to the plot, so you're not losing much by starting there, and you definitely gain a fair amount from a visual medium. That's all the books I read in October. As for my plans for November, they are as follows. Obviously, I'm going to read the last 3 volumes of Solo Leveling by Jugong. I also still need to read Nevada by Imogen Binney, which I will have already done by the time this video is posted, as we'll be discussing it on the 9th. I didn't listen to Heatwave by TJ Klune with my brother, so that's still in the plans. Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir finally came in from the library, so I'll read that. I say finally, by the way, because I put the hold in, I'm pretty sure, within a week of reading The Martian in July. And despite my library having 26 copies, I'm just now getting it. For my challenge books this month, I need to read Persuasion by Jane Austen as a second chance book. Which I now realize probably means give a book a second chance rather than a second chance romance, which is what I was thinking when I made these plans. Whatever, I'm sticking with it. I'll also try to read The Mistreader by Rand and Robin Miller with David Wingrove. This is for a book that intimidates me. I'm not really intimidated by books, but I started this back in high school and never finished. And I remember it being rather dense writing in addition to being an omnibus of 3 books, and therefore quite thick. So it's as intimidating as books get for me. Remnants of Filth Volume 5 comes out on the 19th, so I plan to pick that up and will likely read it pretty much immediately. I also need to read Lord of Eternal Night by Ben Alderson for December's book club, so I'll try to throw that in somewhere, but who knows. If you like this video, I hope you'll watch more in the future. Thanks for watching this one. Bye!